Kyle Monongai. I'm trying, Jamie. I'm trying. Monongai. Monongai. Monongai.
Monongai.
That guy. Or
I
Rachaad
had to
White.
listen to multiple shows this morning to make sure I pronounced his name correct today. But
Brother,
everybody
I
pronounced
can't
it
even pronounce
Monongai.
my kid's name sometimes. Or Rachaad White versus New England. I went off on Monday about this Manon guy, and I celebrated everyone, because this is one of the rare occasions where the favorite Twitter guy or the favorite Blue Sky guy finally does something. Because let's be honest, social media is successful, and you find one good guy in college, we all gush over him, and that person usually does nothing. Usually. So we finally get a guy that we're all universally in on, and he performed when he had the chance. So that's good to see. My problem this week specifically, he's playing the Giants. Last week he played the Bengals, which was a wild score fest. Both teams scored 40 points. There was a ton of possessions. That's why he was able to get the 26 carries. I don't expect him to get that amount of carries this week against the Giants. I expect a somewhat tougher matchup on the ground, although the Giants do give up the second most points to the running back position, so that's a possibility. We don't know Swift's injuries, status. We know it's a chronic injury. We know that he most likely isn't going to play this week. And we know that Ben Johnson wants to run the football. Ever since the bye week happened, that's what they've done. They are no longer we're going to throw it to Odunze and pass it around the field. We're going to establish a run with DeAndre Swift. And honestly, they did a successful job since the bye. Monongai, the guy, he is going to be taking the load here. He had about 75% of the snaps last week. He forced 6 missed tackles last week. 123 of his yards of his 76 came after contact. He's just a monster, 7th round pick, and I have high hopes for him, but just temper your expectations. He's not going to get that workload because of the scoring. They're just not going to score that many points again, you would think. Rachaad White, on the other hand, he had 2 bad performances. He carried the ball 23 times for 105 yards in both the last 2 games alone, combining for 16.5 fantasy points. Now, we look at numbers, Justin, and we look at numbers and go, wow, that was bad. Wow, why did he only score 8.1? Wow, why did he only score 8.2? But you don't dive into the games. Versus New Orleans, before the bye week, they won 23-3 in a very uneventful game. Nothing happened. Baker only threw for 152 yards. They didn't need to go nuts against New Orleans. Their defense and special teams took care of that game for them themselves. Sean Tucker had 12 carries in that New Orleans game. Again, Rachaad White only had 13. The leading receiver for the Buccaneers that game was Tiny Tez. They didn't need to do anything. That's my point. Okay. Now, the week before that, they got blown out by Detroit. Blown out. Couldn't do anything. Rachaad White had 10 for 38. Just wasn't involved because of the game script. That game, Sean Tucker only had 1 carry. Just wasn't needed. So you got to look at these 2 games in perspective. They got blown out. You got game scripted out. And then the other game, they were blowing the other team out. By de facto, got game script out. So with that all being said, they're playing New England. I think it's going to be a competitive matchup. I think Rachaad White's going to be heavily involved. They don't have Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is probably never coming back this season. Bucky Irvin, look at your milk cartons here in the Tampa Bay area, guys. Bucky Irvin's on the milk cartons. We don't know where he is. He's not in the facility. Nobody's getting interviews with him. He's not practicing. Nobody knows where he is. It's the Rachaad White show, guys. That's why I'm starting him over the rookie. I understand the rookie had a big game against Cincinnati. This is a different matchup against the New York Giants. Rachaad White is on a competitive team, a much better team than Chicago, I think, even though Chicago's 5-3. I get that. But they're going against New England. This is a massive, yardstick game for the Buccaneers and for the Patriots. So I'm going to go Rachaad White this week. That alone gives me all I need to know about Rachaad White. How say you, Justin? Are you going to go?
Bucky's been missing for five weeks, and coming off of a bye, you'd hope he would have been back. This one is a little bit more tough because it's like, do I hope that Monongai has another big game like he had against Cincinnati? Probably won't against the Giants, but we don't know. Or do you just hope Rachaad White is the guy? Just talking about the games that you were talking about, in a game where you're just winning, 23-3 or whatever the score was you said against the Saints, you would expect the running back to get more utilization. But Rachaad White had 13 rush attempts. Sean Tucker had 12. Sean Tucker had 10 points. He outscored Rachaad White in week 8 against New Orleans, which is it. I don't like that. Like I don't like that. So we saw a poor performance against Detroit where he got game scripted out of a blowout, and then he loses touches to Sean Tucker. I don't like that going into New England where they have a very fun offense. They're going to be able to score, and now we have to keep up with them. I feel like if Egbuka is back to being 100% healthy, I think the passing offense might be looking better. But I don't really trust that running game with Rachaad White and Sean Tucker splitting that backfield. If we look at DeAndre Swift and Monongai, if DeAndre Swift doesn't play with that groin injury, it's de facto Monongai is going to play. He is the guy. Remember when everybody thought Roschon Johnson was going to be a thing? That's no longer a thing. And if you want to go back and look at, Monongai has 2 games of double-digit points. He had a 17.4 game in week 7 against New Orleans, and then he had that 22.8 last week against Cincinnati. Well, you might think, well, maybe DeAndre Swift didn't play in week 7. No, he did. DeAndre Swift scored 20.8. They both did well. So with DeAndre Swift coming back from a groin injury, which is not easy for a running back position that, has to make cuts, and DeAndre Swift is a running back that does make cuts a lot. I don't like him just immediately coming back and getting a full workload. I think Kyle is going to be a guy that's going to get more of that workload against the Giants. Right before they head to a much needed win against another division opponent in Minnesota. I'm going Kyle this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets nothing if DeAndre Swift plays. But again, DeAndre Swift coming off of a groin injury terrifies me right now. And Rachaad White got game scripted out of a win where all they had to do was run the ball.
Do you think they learned their lesson not to play their key players in moments they don't need to with the whole Chris Godwin situation? And
I mean,
let's be
maybe.
honest,
But is
they didn't
Rachaad White
need-
a key player? Like,
he is now. Who else do they have? Who else do they have? Someone explained to me that they don't have anybody else. They didn't make any moves.
If you want to count on that, then I mean, let's go back to the blowout loss against Detroit. He got game scripted out of that because he was blown out. They were blown out. They couldn't run the ball anymore. New England, New
You
England
think
can
New
score.
England's going to blow them out? You think
I
they're
think
going to
New
blow them
England can
out?
score. I think New England can score. And Tampa Bay is going to have to stay up with that score. I think it's going to be a very high scoring game, and that's not going to be Rachaad White.
We'll see, man. So that's our first disagreement there. I'm just banking on Rachaad White and the Buccaneers offense. Maybe I'm a homer. Maybe I'm too close
Maybe
to
you
it.
are.
I don't know.